It was an ordinary evening at Madrid's most prestigious restaurant, until fate decided to intervene. Eduardo Mendoza, a 52-year-old billionaire, sat alone at his favorite table by the window. He was a man of power, wealth, and success, but also of deep, buried sorrow. The last thing he expected was a young waitress, barely 23, walking up to him with trembling hands and uttering words that would shatter everything he believed to be true. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "But my mother has a ring exactly like yours." Eduardo froze. He looked down at the heirloom on his finger, a white ring with a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. It had been in his family for over 200 years. There were only 3 such rings in existence. One was on his hand. Another had vanished 25 years ago. And the third was supposed to be buried with the woman he had loved more than life itself. Madrid, November 2024. The restaurant, La Gastronomica, stood at the heart of Salamanca, a meeting point for Spain's elite. Eduardo Mendoza, 52, was a hotel magnate, the owner of a luxury chain worth over 500 million euros. He had come to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the company he had built with his late wife, Carmen. But the celebration felt hollow. Carmen had died in a car crash 5 years ago, taking with her every dream he had for the future. "More wine, sir." Eduardo looked up and saw a young waitress, about 23, with dark hair, warm brown eyes, and a shy smile. Her name tag read, Sophia. As she poured the wine, Eduardo noticed her staring at his hand, her expression unsettled. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Sophia hesitated, biting at her lip. "Forgive me, sir, but your ring. My mother has one exactly like it." Eduardo felt the air leave his lungs. "That's impossible," he whispered. "This ring is one of a kind. It's been in my family for generations." "I know it sounds crazy," Sophia said nervously. "But when I saw it, I almost dropped my tray. It's identical to the one my mother has worn my whole life." His heart began to race. Only 3 such rings existed. His great-grandfather had commissioned them in 1890 for his 3 sons. Eduardo wore one. The second had disappeared 25 years ago, when his twin brother, Carlos, died in an mountaineering accident. And the third. "What is your mother's name?" Eduardo asked, his voice steady. "Carmen Ruiz," Sophia replied. "Do you know her?" The world tilted beneath him. Carmen. His wife's name was Carmen, but her surname was Mendoza, not Ruiz. And she died 5 years ago. "How old is your mother?" he pressed. 47, Sophia said. "Sir, you've gone pale." 47. Carmen would be 47 if she were alive. But he had been at her funeral. He had seen her coffin with his own eyes. "Sophia," Eduardo said hoarsely, "I need you to do me a huge favor. Can you send me a photo of your mother?" The young woman looked confused, but pulled out her phone and scrolled through her gallery. She handed it to him. Eduardo stared at the screen, and his entire world came crashing down. It was Carmen. His Carmen. Alive. He grabbed the phone, his hands shaking, and studied the familiar green eyes, the same smile, the way she tilted her head. It was her. Without a doubt. "Mr. Mendoza. Are you okay?" "This woman," he said, pointing at the image. "Where does she live?" "In Cuenca, sir." "Why? Do you know her?" Eduardo stood abruptly, knocking over his wine glass. The other diners turned her to stare. "Sophia, I need you to tell me everything about your mother." "Everything?" "Sir, you're scaring me." "What's going on?" He sat back down, forcing himself to breathe. I'm sorry. It's just, your mother looks exactly like someone I once knew. Sophia, still nervous, replied, well, my mother is Carmen Ruiz. She's lived in Cuenca my whole life. She worked as a secretary until she retired 2 years ago. And your father? I don't have one. My mother died when I was a baby. A work accident. Eduardo felt a chill run through him. A work accident. He had been an architect before becoming a teller, and he remembered all too well faking his own death in a construction accident 25 years ago to escape with Carmen. But the Carmen in that photo was his wife. The one who had supposedly died 5 years ago. Sophia, he said gravely, when is your birthday? March 15th. Why all these questions? Eduardo did the math. If Sophia was 23, she was born in March 2001, exactly 9 months after the last time he had seen his Carmen alive before the car crash. My God, he murmured. It can't be. What can't be? He looked at Sophia with fresh eyes, and now he could see it. She had his nose, his eyebrows, his long, elegant fingers. Sophia, he said, his voice cracking, has your mother ever mentioned a man named Eduardo? The young woman frowned. No. Well, sometimes, when she's had a little wine, she mentions an Eduardo and gets sad. But she never talks about him. Tears welled in Eduardo's eyes. Carmen was alive. And if his suspicions were right, Sophia was his daughter. I have to see your mother, he said, rising again. Right now. But sir, it's 10 p.m. She's in Cuenca, 2 hours away. I don't care. Can you call her? Ask her to come here. Sophia stepped back. Mr. Mendoza, you're really frightening me. What is going on? Eduardo realized how he must look. He took a deep breath and steadied himself. Sophia, what I'm about to tell you may sound impossible, but I believe your mother is my wife. Your wife? That makes no sense. My mother isn't married. My wife Carmen died in a car crash 5 years ago, or so I was led to believe. Sophia stared at him as though he had lost his mind. Sir, my mother never had any accident. She's been living peacefully in Cuenca for years. Eduardo slipped his ring off and held it out to her. It's exactly like your mother's, isn't it? Sophia examined it closely. It's identical. It even has the same engraving inside, Amor Eterno. A shiver went down Eduardo's spine. Only Carmen and he knew about that inscription. Sophia, he said with quiet determination, I'm going to Cuenca tonight. Will you come with me? But sir, I'll pay you 1,000 euros just to take me to your mother. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. But if you're crazy, I'm calling the police. Eduardo smiled for the first time in years. If I'm crazy, you can call whoever you want. Like the story so far? Drop a like and subscribe. Let's continue. Eduardo's body sped through the night toward Cuenca. Sophia sat beside him, still wary but deeply curious. Can you please explain what this is all about? She asked. Eduardo kept his eyes on the dark road. 5 years ago, my wife Carmen died in a car accident, or that's what I was told. And you think my mother is your wife? Everything fits. The ring. Their name. Her age. Your birthday. They arrived in Cuenca at 1 a.m. Sophia guided him to a small apartment in the old town. They climbed the stairs in silence. Sophia knocked softly. Mom? It's me, Sophia. The door opened, and there she stood. A woman in a bathrobe, hair tousled from sleep. Eduardo's heart stopped. It was Carmen. His Carmen. Alive. Real. Standing right in front of him after 5 long years of grief and lies. Carmen locked eyes with Eduardo, and all the blood drained from her face. "Hello, Carmen," Eduardo whispered. "We need to talk." She looked at Sofia with terror in her eyes. "What have you done?" "Mom, is it true? Is he my father?" Carmen covered her face and broke down. "Come inside," she sobbed. "I always knew this day would come." The small living room was heavy with silence. Carmen had thrown on a jacket over her robe and sat facing Eduardo, her eyes red from crying. "How long have you known I was alive?" Eduardo asked. Sofia looked between them, lost. "Who is Raul Bosques?" "A criminal," Eduardo said bitterly. "Someone I should never have done business with." Carmen continued, "Raul offered me a deal. If I faked my death as he did, he'd let you live. But if I stayed, he would murder us both. And you agreed." "I was pregnant, Eduardo. 2 months along. I couldn't risk our baby's life." Eduardo turned to Sofia, his eyes glistening. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have tried to stop me, and we would have both ended up dead." Sofia jumped to her feet. "So I've been living a lie for 23 years. I did it to protect you." Carmen cried. "You told me my father was dead. I grew up thinking I was an orphan." Eduardo stepped toward her. "I'm so sorry. If only I'd known you existed." "After I disappeared," Carmen said, "Raul left us alone. But he threatened to kill us if I ever made contact. So I stayed silent. I lived in fear, until 5 years ago, when Raul was killed in a gang war. I saw it in the news. We were finally free." "Then why didn't you come back to me?" Eduardo asked. "Because too many years had passed. And I wasn't the same woman anymore." Sofia headed for the door. "I need air. I need to think." She walked out, leaving Eduardo and Carmen alone for the first time in over 2 decades. The silence between them stretched like a wound. "She has your fire," Carmen finally said. "She has your heart," Eduardo replied with a sad smile. Carmen removed her ring and held it out. "I suppose I should return this." Eduardo gently pushed her hand back. "That ring has always belonged to you. After your supposed death, I walked away from all that darkness. I sold everything. I left it all behind." "Really?" "Raul had taken the only thing that mattered to you. There was nothing left to hold on to." Carmen looked at him with fresh eyes. "I'm glad you changed." "Carmen, I know we are not the same people we were 25 years ago. But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe now we can build something better." Just then, the door opened. Sofia walked back in. Her eyes were puffy, but she seemed calmer. "I've been thinking," she said. "I want to know my father. But on my terms." Eduardo nodded. "Whatever you need. First, no more lies. Ever?" "Agreed," Eduardo said. "Second, I want to discover your life slowly. One step at a time." "Of course," Carmen whispered. "And third, promise me you'll never put business above family again." Eduardo moved closer to Sofia. "I promise. These past 5 years taught me that money means nothing without the people you love." Sofia studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. We can try." Carmen rushed forward and wrapped arms around both of them. "Maybe it's not too late for us." And for the first time in years, Eduardo felt something stir in his chest, hope. 6 months later. The terrace of Eduardo's finest hotel in Levantense glowed with fairy lights. It was Sophia's 24th birthday, and the first time she celebrated it with both parents. The months had been slow and tender. Sophia left her waitressing job and enrolled in hotel management school, with Eduardo covering her tuition. Carmen had relocated to Madrid, living minutes away from Eduardo, and they were slowly rebuilding their relationship, day by day, conversation by conversation. "How do I look?" Sophia asked, twirling in the blue dress Carmen had gifted her. "Stunning," Carmen said, fixing her collar. Eduardo approached with a small velvet box. "Sophia, I've something for you." She opened it and found a ring, not identical to theirs, but made in the same design, crafted in rose gold. "I had this made just for you," Eduardo said. "It's part of our family tradition, but this one is yours alone." Sophia slipped it onto her finger and burst into tears. "Dad." It was the first time she had called him that. Eduardo's voice was cracked. "I love you, my daughter." Carmen wrapped her arms around them both. "I never thought this day would ever come." That evening, during dinner, Sophia raised her glass. "6 months ago, I thought I was fatherless," she said. "Today, I have a complete family. It hasn't been easy. We are still learning. But I've realized something: the best families aren't perfect from the start. They are the ones that choose to work at it." Eduardo lifted his glass. "To second chances." Carmen raised hers. "To love that survives time." Sophia smiled and added, "and families that find each other when they least expect it." 3 years later, Eduardo and Carmen remarried in a small, heartfelt ceremony. Sophia served as maid of honor and walked her mother down the aisle. Eduardo had donated most of his hotels to a charitable foundation, keeping only 2 for a simple, peaceful life. Carmen now ran the foundation, helping families torn apart by circumstance find their way back to each other, turning her pain into purpose. Sophia graduated with honors and took over management of one of the family hotels, proving she had inherited her father's business instinct and her mother's compassion. One quiet evening, as they dined on the terrace of their Madrid home, Sophia raised her glass once more. "You know the strangest thing," she mused. "All of this started because I recognized a ring. If I hadn't been working at that restaurant that night, if I hadn't noticed Dad's ring, we might never have found each other." Eduardo took hold of Carmen's and Sophia's hands. "Fate has a strange way of bringing people back together." Carmen smiled softly. "Sometimes, you find the most precious things when you stop searching." "And sometimes," Sophia added, "happy endings arrive when you've almost given up hope." Eduardo looked at his own ring, then at theirs. 3 rings, 3 lives, once scattered, now found. Their story was proof that true love can survive decades of loss, that family can heal even after years of necessary lies, and miracles often arrive dressed as simple coincidences. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that families can reunite after years apart, and that love is stronger than time, drop a heart below. Have you ever had a moment of destiny? A coincidence that changed everything? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to read it. Hit like if you believe in second chances. Subscribe so you never miss another story that restores faith in family. Share this with someone who needs to believe in miracles. And comment, Destiny Reunited, if you too believe that families are always meant to find each other. Because no matter how much time passes, no matter how many walls are built to protect the ones we love, true love always finds a way. Sometimes it's the smallest detail, a glint of gold, a family heirloom, that opens the door to the most extraordinary reunion. See you in the next story. Until then, remember, love never gives up. And neither should you. I love you all, family of the heart. Why?